Welcome to Yelling Into the Void, a podcast discussing and exploring topics in World of Warcraft. I'm Tevin, and joined as always by Scott.
Hi.
And it's kind of the calm before the nether storm, Scott.
I see what you did there.
You like that one? I feel like it doesn't hit the same when you know the joke that I'm going to tell.
Well,
you know?
I mean, I think you're making a lot of assumptions about how much of the script I'm reading before we sit down and record. So,
but anyways, guys, in just a week, we're going to be in Koresh hanging out with all the cool new Void NPCs and going back. And I'm thinking there's going to be some brokers potentially that we're going to get to see too, which is going to be kind of cool.
Yeah, I can't believe it's basically here already. I felt like it's both been a while since it was announced and snuck up on me at the same time.
Dude, I feel like the reason for that is that we know in like a week or two we're going to get the midnight announcement. And so it's just like, we normally have like this season to look forward to, but this season is like completely overshadowed by the fact that we're about to get an expansion announcement too.
Do you think that's going to hurt the perception of the season? Because, I mean, you're right. Like, what I'm thinking of is I remember when The War Within Season 1 came out, and then like a week after Season 1 came out, the PTR for 11.05 dropped and all the class changes along with it. Remember, we were like, oh, well, bummer. I don't think, like, let's be clear here. I don't think the midnight announcement is going to have details like what the balancing of the classes and design of the classes is going to look like. I think it's mostly going to be high level stuff, but I do wonder if, like, by the time it's released, theoretically the race should be over. But most of the people will still be progressing through stuff. So I just wonder how much of this is going to overshadow. Like, I think it all depends on how cool the midnight stuff is, right? Like, if it's really, really, really awesome, then there is definitely going to be, at least with me, a level of like, okay, season 3 is great, but I want that now. Gimme.
Yeah, I almost wonder, like, it felt worse because it was the 0.5 patch. Like, we know that this is the literal next thing coming.
Yeah.
And whereas like with midnight, it's like, we know we're going to go through like 0.5, 0.175. Like, we've got, or whatever, the other way around. We've got room to go until midnight. So I don't think it's going to feel necessarily as bad. I do think that it is going to start stirring up a lot of the hype of like what is coming. I think it's going to kind of reinvigorate player housing hype again, which is going to be interesting to see. But,
which I took a look at the timeline again, the timeline they posted at the beginning of the year, and it does have the player housing symbol on the timeline. So I don't think we're getting midnight before the end of the year, because that would be a very short season 3, right? If midnight was coming in like December, that would be a 4-month season, and that feels pretty short. But I think they might bring player housing about before the expansion actually launches.
I could see that. Yeah. I also there was the rumblings that we would have an extremely short expansion cycle too. So, I mean, I guess it's not out of the realm of possibility that it comes before the end of the year, but I think highly, highly, highly unlikely.
Yeah. The guess was 18 months, right? Because essentially they would say, okay, we have 3 6-month seasons and there's not going to be a season 4. So yeah, if it's 3 6-month seasons, except the final season is only 4 months, that's a 16th month cycle. That's very short.
Yeah.
I don't know. How would you feel about that? Like, I don't know if I'd be opposed. Like, 4 months into the season, have I accomplished all of my goals? Maybe not, but like, probably will have cleared the raid by then. Probably will have gotten close to what my final score is going to be.
I think people will have petered out by 4 months, but the problem is like, if you've set the precedent that there's going to be 6 months to clear a raid, and then you've got guilds who are like barely scraping by getting CE, they're not going to be thrilled about the fact that they have 2 months less.
Yeah, definitely the guilds that get CE within the final weeks of the patch. Like, there are like probably guilds right now. It makes me sad that Max never has time to do his Race to World Last stuff in these tiers, because he's so busy prepping for the next expansion. Because I really love the Race to World Last content. I think that's great stuff. And that's basically happening right now as we speak. Guilds are making their final attempts, their final pushes at CE. So yeah, I think you're right that suddenly saying, just kidding, this is a 4-month season, I think would hurt those guilds a lot specifically. So they probably won't do that.
Again, not out of the realm of possibility,
Sure.
but unlikely. So I guess let's just let's throw this out there before the announcement so that we can go on record saying it. And I think you've said it in the past, but that puts us looking at probably like February/March release for Midnight.
Yeah, I think February.
So, which is cool. End of January, early February would be cool. I think if we start pushing into March, then we might be going a little bit long, since they are trying to do the 6-month seasons.
I think it depends on a couple things. It depends on when they bring player housing. Like, they might see that as like a stopgap. We're going to introduce the system, not have the fully fleshed out version of the system, but like an introductory version of the system that I think buys them some time, because people are going to have a lot of fun with that. I think Legion Remix and how fun it is and how it's treated. The weird thing about Legion Remix is, so like, I don't know how they're exactly going to time this, because they don't want to do it too early, right? Because people are still going to be progressing in retail, the season, but they don't want it too late, because they want to give people time, because Legion Remix is going to have Mythic Plus in it. So people are going to want time to do that. So I'm really curious how they space this stuff out. Like, if Legion Remix is a big hit and very popular, I could see a March release might work. But yeah, we'll see. I heard rumors. I don't even remember I heard this, but I heard rumblings that people have heard that they're not going to do a season 4 like they have in the past, but they will do like the turbo boost. They'll do another turbo boost type event at some point in the season, and the turbo boost will perhaps unlock the old raids. So do like a season 4 light in the middle of season 3. I don't even remember where I heard that rumbling. I don't know if there's any substantiation to that rumor at all, or if it's just a person pulling shit out of their ass. But that would be an interesting idea as well. I don't know.
It would be interesting, especially since we haven't heard anything about dinars yet.
True,
because normally what comes with season 4s is dinars, and
but that went so well in season 2, Tevin. Everyone was a fan of it. No complaints here.
One total useful item, maybe 2 on some of my characters, but most of my characters I got like 1 item out of that, and man, it is just a shell of a system of what it was at the end of Dragonflight. Let me tell you what.
Yeah, I don't want to jump into our main topic here too early, but I have complicated thoughts on the system. We'll get into, I think.
Yeah. Well, as far as other news, I do think there's a few important things to call out. Not a ton of news. Like I said, it's the calm before the storm. So there's not really a ton going on right now. I think the main thing that I want to make sure that people are aware of, Scott and I have been talking the last couple days. Scott doing some research around what gearing in the early season 3 is going to look like. And Mythic Zeros are going to be dropping 681 gear. So even for people who have like almost close to BIS gear in the current season, this stuff is still going to be good for you because it's 681. And then
it's on champion track, so it can go up to 704.
Yeah, which is huge. And if you have all like 680-ish item level pieces, if you have all mythic pieces, like this is still potentially a 20 item level bump for you. Yeah. So definitely be looking at M0s. They are, I don't remember if they did this in season 2. I haven't done Mythic Zeros since the War Within started. I'm going to be honest with you guys, but they're back to being weekly lockouts. Yep. If you haven't kept up with Mythic Zeros, so they are no longer daily lockouts. They are back to being weekly lockouts. So you are only going to get to do one world tour per character per week. So you'll have to supplement this with heroic dungeons, which also aren't going to be awful. They're not going to be great if you have good gear right now, but they're not going to be awful.
If you're kind of at gear cap, if you're like in this high 670s or 680s, you're probably not going to see a lot of benefit out of heroic dungeons. But if you're like 650, like on my alts, I think doing heroics would have some value to them because they drop 665 loot. I believe it's adventure level 665 loot, which means it can be upgraded all the way up to 678 with weathered crests. There will be a cap on crests, so it's not like you're just going to be able to run it forever and upgrade all your stuff because the crest will have a cap. But yeah, if you really, really, really want to min max everything, yeah, do your world tour and then run heroics to get any pieces that, like, I think any pieces that you didn't have at Myth Track might be replaced by these. But like, I don't know, it's pretty minor. I think we talked about this when it was first announced. I'm glad they're doing it. I'm glad there's going to be something to do progression wise the first week. But I'm also glad that I won't feel super pressured to do it, that I can still like actually absorb the story of the patch. So I'm pretty excited about that. And let's remember, it will only be 6 of the 8 dungeons available. So it's not even a full world tour because the Tazavesh on M0 is the hard mode version of Tazavesh, which is not unlocking until the season starts. So it's 6 dungeons. That's it. It should be pretty easy.
Are we actually gonna? Do you know for a fact that we're gonna get access to the Mythic 0 version of the new dungeon prior to the raid?
They have said that we are doing that. Yes. That's weird, right? Doesn't that make you go, hey, remember when they talked about how the dungeon was actually story-wise the final piece of the... Isn't that weird? Yes, it is, but it'll be there.
Interesting. Well, I guess the only other thing to really cover is, so like, I don't want to get too into the weeds in that because Scott and I here in a couple weeks after we play with this want to take a look back, because this is the first time we've ever really had something to do week 1 that wasn't just get through the story in the first week. So I want to take kind of like a retrospective look on that and see, is it enough? Is it not enough? And how do we feel about it? So kind of leave that where it is. But the rest of the news this week was like, there was a PTR patch over the weekend. If you play the Blueberry class, you're probably happy. Other than that, I don't think that there's a ton to know. But yeah, if you're a Shaman player, Ellie Shaman specifically, I think are pretty happy with the changes that came through.
Yeah, I think there's some good balancing changes overall. I think there's more to come. I would be very surprised if there is not a balancing patch pushed to the PTR this week, leading up to the patch next week. I think there's still some issues, some classes like Frost DK is very good right now. Resto Druid is, I mean, I don't want to say this because I don't want to put it into the ether, but it's very, very powerful, and it's probably going to get nerfed before the patch goes live. My understanding is basically Resto Druid is right now just gapping everyone in HPS so much that like they can just sustain the levels of HPS that other healers can only do in their cooldowns. So I just don't see that staying. But I think it is kind of lining up for Resto Druid to be meta this season, unless the nerf is really harsh, which is pretty cool. It's good for me. I like it.
Talking of meta, Scott was looking at some of the meta comps that are in the PTR right now and sending them over, and we are kind of getting a little bit of an inkling, albeit from an extremely small sample size from extremely skilled players.
Yeah.
And like a lot of people seem like they're playing like Prop Paladin, Resto Druid, like Scott said, Mage, DK. So I guess we'll see how it goes when the season starts. I'm not sure that I saw Prop Paladin coming out of here, but their tier set probably increases their damage like an absolute shit ton. Yeah. So I could see that being a reality if they don't need the survivability that some of the other tanks have, or the utility that Demon Hunter has. Prop Paladin is probably going to be doing a lot of fucking damage.
Yeah, so. I think it's going to be between Prop Paladin and Demon Hunter, which is funny because like that will mean this is a season of meta tank is between Prot Paladin and Demon Hunter, basically, which is a little disappointing. But as far as the rest of them, I think the dust is still settling a little bit. I feel like the safest bet one could make is that Mage will probably be in the meta somewhere, because it seems like Mage is just always in the meta these days.
Mm-hmm.
And the other two remain to be seen. I think, like I said, like there's a lot of very high keys on the PTR with Frost DK, and it was just because Frost DK was doing incredible damage. I think they're probably going to get brought down to earth a little bit. I think they already were in the latest patch. I think it's probably going to be a little bit more. And then the other spec is kind of open. I think Shadow Priest is performing very well, so maybe that's where, if you're running a mage, if you're running a demon hunter, you can get a PI from a Shadow Priest. So as long as they're performing well DPS wise, they're a good pick. And then you only have one spot left after that. So I think it might be, sadly, something we've seen before in the meta. It seems like it always kind of falls back on this standard thing.
Yeah, I will say one thing that we didn't really notice in taking a look at the comps that are running the like 20s on PTR right now. Nobody's really running AUG, and AUG is apparently doing like super well. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see AUGs pushing into the like 22s, 23s.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the danger of doing exactly what we were talking about, which is like looking at like there's a very limited group of people that are actually trying to do very high keys on PTR. Most people are just testing things and feeling it out. So to conclude too much on that is dangerous. But yeah, it doesn't seem like there's too many people playing AUG. That does not mean that AUG will not be very good. They very probably will be. But whether they end up being brought in the meta comp, we don't know yet.
Mm-hmm. But anyways, I just wanted to take a quick little look at that. It's been giving you guys a little peek into the things that Scott and I do at the weeks in between these episodes, is just to shoot the shit back and forth about stupidest little things like this. Anyway, Scott, I guess we should probably stop wasting time and get into the meat and potatoes of this episode, because it's likely going to be quite a bit. So, this is our retro for season 2 episode. And I think that it makes sense for us to start off with Raid specifically, and then go into Mythic Plus, because we will probably be a little bit more verbose with Mythic Plus.
That's a fair assumption. I guess before we get into the detail, I'm curious, just like overall season 2, like just, we're about to go into the detail of everything, but just how are you feeling here at the very end of the season? We were pretty hyped for the season going into it. We had a lot of positive things to say about just about every part of it. Do you still feel that way here 6 months later?
I think that this season delivered on everything that I expected it to and more, honestly.
Yeah.
Personally, like the only thing that I would say feels a bit weird, and this kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier, like, is 6 months too long for a season? I feel like the last like month or 2 months, I start to kind of like not really play as much, but I also don't think that's a bad thing, like to have a cooling off period. But yeah, do you feel like 6 months is too long, or the right amount of time?
Here's what I'm doing in my brain right now. In my brain, I'm saying, was it 6 months? So March, right? The season came out March 4th. I just checked this. March, April, May, June, July. So we had a 5-month season. So it wasn't 6. So I mean, 5 and a little bit. So it wasn't a full 6. So maybe Midnight is coming out this year. My brain is exploding right now. I don't know. Like I think to get back to your actual question, I don't know. I mean, like, there's a part of me. So let's be clear here. Like, I took an entire month of this season off, right? Like, the game came out March 4th. The season began on March 4th. I played the first week, and then I did not play again until like the second week of April. So basically an entire month off. And so I on the one hand, I'm saying I kind of ran out of time, because I kind of did run out of time where I played every single healer. I was just starting to work on my evoker here when we basically out of time now. And so having a little bit more time in the season would have been great, but also I didn't play for a month. So maybe if I had played for that month, I'm done with everything I wanted to do a month ago. And I'm like, Jesus, when's the stuff going to get here? So it's tough for me to know that for sure. I mean, I think my interest in this game kind of ebbs and flows depending on what's going on. Like I play it pretty consistently, but I definitely had weeks that I played it way more than others. There are times I'm like, I'm kind of bored of it. So I feel like we could maybe speed it up. Going back to the conversation at the beginning of a 4-month season, is that if that's on the horizon, would we be okay with that? I mean, I think as long as you declare that early and then are consistent about it, I think ultimately people would probably just adjust to that reality. Like you said, I think there would be some CE guilds that get there at the very end of the patch on a 6-month or 5.5-month season, whatever, that would be disappointed or would have to like think about their schedules and do we need to accelerate? I don't know. I mean, I think maybe going along with that, if you accelerate the season time, maybe you accelerate the rate at which bosses are nerfed, the rate at which the buff comes in, the rate at which the mid patches that introduce new gear, like presumably you would accelerate all that stuff too. And so maybe the net result from a progression standpoint is essentially the same. You're just having quicker seasons. So I don't know. I guess the ultimate question, the one we haven't asked, is like, can the developers keep up with that kind of schedule? And I don't know about that.
It's been a bit sketchy lately, so maybe not.
Yeah.
But well, I did sidetrack us a little bit. So you asked me how I'm feeling about the season now that we're at the end of it. How about you?
I thought this was a really great season. I really do. I enjoyed the raid a whole bunch. I think the Mythic Plus is in one of the best states it's ever been in since I've returned to the game. I thought like all the classes that I'm playing right now like feel really good. So I mean, yeah, I'm pretty happy about it. I think we were basically correct in everything we said. That the aesthetic of the place is really cool. The raid looked really fun, and it was everything I thought going into it. I still think now, and maybe even more so. I think the dinar system that we'll get into was a little bit disappointing, but I thought the turbo boost, while I'm not sold on if it's a good idea to do every season going forward, I thought it functioned. And so like every choice that they made along the line, on the parts of the gameplay that I like, I thought were great. So yeah, that's how I'm feeling.
They definitely, like, if nothing else, proved that like they can pick an aesthetic and like run with it.
Yeah.
And it makes me extremely excited for this void aesthetic that we're coming up on.
Yeah.
Because while it's not as interesting to me and not as fun to me as like goblin themed, they just proved that they can take something and just absolutely knock it out of the park with the goblins. I mean, they nailed it with the music, they nailed it with the environmental design, they nailed it with the boss fights. Like literally everything about the season, they did correctly and did justice by that.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see how that carries into Koresh and beyond, with the void stuff that we're going into.
I agree, and I think it's like the perfect like mid expansion patch. Like I think like you don't want everything to be like super epic and important and the fate of the world all the time, but you do need it to be that some of the time. And I think the one that's in the middle, the patch that's in the middle, is like the perfect place for that. And so we had like a little bit lighter, a little bit goofier, not as epic and world ending. And now in season 3, we're having the exact opposite of that, where it is literally the world is ending and we have to do something to stop it right now. So yeah, I mean, I think ultimately like the patch did what it needed to do, which is define some stakes that were slightly different from the immediate stakes, but was still fun and enjoyable. So yeah, I'm just happy with it. Like I really have very few bad things to say, which
Yeah.
might be disappointing to our listeners, but that's how I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that there's anything that I would say you and I are going to talk and say that there really needs to be huge improvements here. Maybe barring like one or two things
Sure.
that we aren't also going to say is good. Like just because we want something to change doesn't necessarily mean that this iteration of it was bad per se.
Yeah.
It just could be better.
Sure.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
well, let's start talking about the raid, and to peel back the veil here a little bit for for everybody listening and watching. The way that we do these scripts is we kind of just put down bullet points of things that we want to talk about. So this is in no means the order at which I want to cover these things, Scott. So I do want to talk about the raid, and I want to talk about like raid bosses
Mm-hmm.
and everything like that. But I actually want to jump down and talk about like the most interesting part of this raid to me, looking back on it, is actually like the amount of like freedom we had to pick which boss we went to at which time. And like there were different wings, but they weren't necessarily like it was very interesting to see.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, we got the card that teleports you back to the beginning of the raid, and then you can go do whatever you want to there. You can even like skip Vexy, the first boss, if you just walk out a different door. Like there was so much freedom in this raid comparatively to any of the raids that we've had in the recent past that like it got me excited. Like I like things like this because as a guild, you're going to continue to do the same thing week over week over week, most likely. But it doesn't mean every guild progresses the same way. It allows you to like potentially go clean up a boss later, but not have to reprog to get to a boss that you're currently progging on. Like
Sure.
to me, this is huge and I love it. And I know they can't pull it off in every single raid, but I think it worked amazingly in this raid.
Yeah, I think so too. I think one of the weird things about it ultimately though was some of the mid-tier bosses were a bit overtuned to where I think you could go to Styx Bunk Junger and Sprocket Lock and Stock second or maybe even first if you wanted to, but you just would never do that. But I mean, I think the raid was a cool design. I mean, like conceptually, we were in the city of Undermine for both the patch and then ultimately for the raid, and so getting to just like travel around the city for the raid, I thought was great. This is gonna be weird to say this, but like you skip so much of the trash in this raid, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing because I don't love raid trash, but what it does is like I don't know. I ended up like feeling I never like learned my way around the city or the raid. Like I was always like having to use my map. And I think part of that is just because like we went around the outskirts so much. And I wonder if it was like if it would have been better for the design of the raid if we had just lessened the amount of trash, but allowed us to just like literally travel the streets of the city to advance from boss to boss. I also still really think not having a boss built around the drive system was a missed opportunity. I wonder if they tried to have like a boss that was just like the big circle, the road, like, and they just couldn't figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, there's a lot of things about this raid that I like, but it also had one of the most annoying mechanics in my entirety of playing this game that just pissed me off.
Which
and
is
it was the insta kill mechanics on the cars when you're like, because like if it worked, like they hit you and you died,
Yeah.
it would be one thing. But with the desync of the server, and if you have any sort of like bad connection or lag,
Sure.
then you're just randomly dying, and it is. Dude, it's just the most fucking frustrating thing ever.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, there was like this is one of the only raids I felt like where if I died to something stupid and then released and then was like, okay, I'm gonna run back, or even like when we didn't have a warlock and we wiped and I was like, oh, I'll handle it. I was like, how do I how do I get there? And I wonder if part of the what I'm feeling is so let's be clear here. Like this is the first raid I played in a while where I played the raid, we killed it on normal one time, and then we started heroic, and then I quit. And I quit playing the game for a month. And so when I came back to the raid, we hadn't gotten AOTC yet, but we were basically on the last two bosses at that point. And so I missed so much prog that I wonder if I just never internalized like the map or the feel of a lot of this raid without even realizing that that's what was happening. I wonder if that's the case.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's a huge majority of it, because you didn't have to do the run backs every day and everything like that.
Yeah, I mean, the most amount of running back I did was when we're already in the casino, and the casino operates differently from the entire rest of the raid. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, I guess let's jump into some of the bosses. And I don't know if we should do this, like go through as far as like notable bosses and just call those out. Because we've already done kind of like a raid overview to go over like the boss mechanics and things like that.
That's right.
Actually, let's do it this way. Let's go boss by boss and not necessarily go into detail, but was it a good boss? Was it a bad boss? Did you enjoy it? And I guess, would you like to see these mechanics continue? So
all right. Are we start with our girl Vexy?
Yeah, I think we should start with Vexy. I'll let you kick it off.
I didn't love this boss. I thought it was fine. I think the motorcycle having to hit the boss with the gunk, the tar or whatever, made for a boss that, I don't know, I felt like even after we were farming it, it's still like the kills were a little clunky. Because it's just like you could mess up the tar locations a lot, and that like meant that like hitting the motorcycles into the boss just became I wasn't confident that we'd be able to do it every time, and it felt like the boss took longer because of that. I don't know. It was a boss that I think you could just kind of brute force, and therefore it just never felt like a smooth, clean, we're doing this the way it was designed fight. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, so I have a love-hate relationship with this boss, because on one hand, it has one of the best things to ever happen in boss fights, and that is an extended period damage amp.
Oh yeah, you're a DPS player. I forgot. You're going to love this boss.
But the other problem with it, though, is it's not difficult per se, but man, is it frustrating. Like you were saying with the oil puddles and stopping the bikes that you need to send into them. And sure, you can clear it with the fire and everything like that. Like there are solutions, but your kills on this are more or less around like, can you one phase her? And if not, you need to do 2 phases. And so like your kill times are not necessarily going to increase too much.
Yeah.
So it's not like a boss where like you feel like you're getting better and therefore you kill it faster. Now that's not necessarily true. You will kill it a little bit faster, but it's not one that feels significant. So that's my biggest issue with it. It's the very first boss, and it's one of those ones that you don't really feel like you are able to just like steamroll. 5 weeks into the raid.
Let's say again. I think most people that listen to this every week know this, but if anyone's listening for the first time, we're talking about the heroic versions of all these fights, right? We have not done these on Mythic, so we don't have that perspective. We're just AOTC gamers over here, talking about heroic. Which, I mean, I enjoy the heroic. I think heroic feels like just the right difficulty for me with a lot of these bosses, but. I mean, there was another thing with Vexy that I thought was really interesting, and I think this was definitely true when compared to Cauldron of Carnage or compared to Rix and maybe even Bunk Junker. The healing output required for Vexy was much higher than those other bosses, which surprised me because it's the first boss. Like I remember we killed the raid on, like, we did a week 1 normal clear, and then we moved into heroic. And we killed Vexy on heroic. I remember, like, the first week, I remember we did that. And it wasn't that hard, but it was like the healing was intense. And I was like, oh, geez, if this is what the rest of the raid is going to be like, it's going to be tough for me. And I was playing a monk healer, which I had never really done in raid. So I was still kind of learning how to do the healer as well. And I was just really nervous. And then we went into Cauldron of Carnage, and I was like, oh, this is substantially lower healing requirement than the last one. So I thought that was interesting. I don't know if they ever I don't know if that was an intentional. I just don't know why that happened. But it definitely especially the burn phase is pretty intense from a healer perspective, and I feel like you're saving your cooldowns for that burn phase, and so the amount of damage coming out of the non-burn phase was pretty intense too.
Well, I don't really have a ton else for 6 Vexy, because the only other part of this fight to me that was huge W and they should do again is the intro to the fight where she jumps over the wall and insta kills people. Like, that is an insta kill that was hilarious and funny to watch every single week.
And it still kills people. We did a raid like the other week and people still die to it. And it's hilarious. I love it.
It's so funny. I don't know how DKs can be up there fighting the like trash mobs and then still make it back in time. They just get ran over every time. But I guess let's go to Cauldron of Carnage next. And this was probably my highest anticipated boss of the raid. I thought the design of this fight and what we were doing and what was happening during the fight was just so cool from an aesthetic standpoint that like they had to have done something massive if this was going to fail, in my opinion. So like complete rose tinted goggles on just to clarify with everybody. But I thought this fight was an absolute fucking banger. Like, I loved this fight.
I was waiting for the turn there because it seemed like you were setting up like I had really high expectations for this fight, and then you said, and it completely nailed them. No,
it did.
I am almost the opposite, where I also had really high expectations for this fight, and I was kind of let down by it.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I think aesthetically it's cool, but I don't know. I guess this is that thing where like sometimes fights are just like too easy, and like so it's just like any of like the epicness of it is kind of lost by it being too easy. And I know like the solution is, hey, play on Mythic, Scott. And I was like, okay, we'll reduce the number of Mythic players, and maybe I will. I just felt like it was so simple and easy that like the fact that it's a giant dinosaur fighting a giant gorilla just kind of lessened for me, and I ended up kind of being a little disappointed by it.
I guess the reason I kind of overlooked that is because it was our second boss, and so like I don't anticipate it to be that difficult.
Yeah.
Plus, when we were progging on it, I was tanking, and the tank hits on that boss, especially on the dino, are not a fucking joke at all. So the gorilla's not too bad, but the dinosaur one it's rough. So it wasn't too super easy when we were first progging it, for me at least.
Yeah, and maybe the answer here is then don't make a boss that looks that fucking epic and cool the second boss, I guess. I don't know. Like I agree with you. Like it shouldn't have been that hard. Like it's a second boss. It should not be super difficult. But yeah, I mean, I didn't hate it. I mean, obviously it's a really cool looking dinosaur. I wish I had gotten enough of my renown track to get that mount. Who knows when the fuck that I'm going to do that, if ever. But I was a little let down by it, a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that. The other thing, when I did swap to DPS, it's pretty frustrating to be a DPS on the gorilla side.
Mm-hmm.
Because depending on your raid size, so like for us, it wasn't that bad, but I have done raids where they have like 25, 30 people, and the amount of shit that's over there is just insane. And like, it's one of those classic things where it's like, it doesn't scale into high numbers very well. Normally, the issue that we run into, and we're going to talk about this for later bosses in this raid, but like normally the problem with scaling is the lower number groups get fucked over. But this is one of those cases where I feel like the more people you have, you just have shit everywhere.
Yeah. I really did like I agree with that. I really did like the don't move too much mechanic. I think that was really cool. I would, speaking of mechanics we'd like to see used again, I think that could be used very effectively depending on the fight. That's like a personal responsibility mechanic that feels fair. and I enjoyed a whole lot. So I like that. I like bosses where you have to switch targets halfway through. Like I like that idea. That's been a mechanic in World of Warcraft forever. And the reason they keep using it again, because I think it's just really effective. It makes the fight dynamic. You have to switch what you're doing as you have to switch the bosses. And I think that's cool. I guess I would like one of the things speaking of Four Horsemen, one of the things I like about those kind of fights is that you can kind of dictate yourself when you want the switch to happen based on your group comp and your gear. And as gear goes up, you can kind of delay the switch for longer and longer and longer. And the design of this fight was such that it really didn't make sense to do that. It really like you don't lose anything by switching because of they come together at the center, and then it's very easy to switch. You don't lose anything by holding on to that. So that was a little bit of a letdown. But yeah, I mean, it was fine. It was fine, man. It was, I healed it, and there wasn't that much damage.
Well, if Cauldron of Carnage was you're just fine, going into the next boss with possibly one of the best taglines ever, Mr. Rick Reverb. This boss, I think, was the most like just meh boss for me in this entire raid.
Yeah.
Like there were some cool parts, there were some annoying parts, but none of it was like overly annoying that the fight pissed me off. None of it was overly cool where I was like, yeah, I want to do that again. He has an immunity phase, which is also just like, why? So
this is DPS mind
this
stalking.
fight,
Yeah,
it is probably my lowest rate of fight of the entire raid.
Yeah, I didn't love Rick Reverb. I do like. I think the pylon power management system is not particularly fun to deal with ever.
Mm-hmm.
No matter which way you decide to do it, it just doesn't seem very fun to me. And I think one fascinating thing about this fight is it took the Ansarek like jumping over the wave thing, which I thought was so cool in Ansarek, and I was like, this is awesome. They like this conversation a few months ago was like they need to find ways to bring this mechanic back to other fights because it's really cool. It took that and it made it lame. It made it super lame, and I think part of that is just because like at least in the Ansarek version, like you had to control when you fired the bubble, like whereas this you just stood in it. It's just it's just stand in a circle at the right time. And like, yes, it's cool that the circle throws you up in the air and over a wave of something coming. But the cool part about that with the Ansarek fight was that you had to control it and time it and like the challenge and difficulty of that. And so they sliced that part out of it and it became nothing. So yeah, I mean, I didn't, and the ads were annoying too. Like it's a fight where like every piece of it is annoying rather than fun.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I never had good time on this fight ever.
The one interesting part of this fight was it did like when we were early on progging and we didn't have a ton of gear, the easiest way for us to kill this boss was to get a third tank. Mm-hmm. So we had one of our DPS begrudgingly go tank.
Yeah, he hated that so much.
You know, while it's not cool that we had to force a DPS to go tank, I do like when raids have like make you have to look at your comp and be like, do we need another healer? Do we need like I like those decisions.
Yeah.
It gives the people who like to be flexible the ability to be flexible. And I think that's cool.
Yeah.
I know not everybody's going to agree with me on that one, but I like that.
I think as long as like the fight is balanced such that like you don't need this, but it could make it easier or harder. Like I think you're right. Like one of the cool things about raiding and about comp management is every group of people have strengths and weaknesses, right? And that those strengths and weaknesses are going to be different from another group. And so like a solution that works for group A might not work for group B, but there are people that were so good at managing those things that they didn't need a tank to do it. Because they just had people on the ball that were managing the energy and we could just heal through it. And then there's groups that, don't have that. And so an easier way is to just cheese it using a tank. And yeah, fights that allow that level of flexibility without forcing it. I think that's a sweet spot that I agree with you on.
But other than that, I really don't have a ton of super positive things to say about Rick Reverb. Like I said, other than his voice line every time you pull him, that fight was so just meh for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Like, eh.
I
But
agree. I agree.
the next fight, I have a very love-hate relationship with, so I'm gonna let you be the lead on this one. But we've got Bunk Junker up next.
Mr. Sticks Bunk Junker, the surprisingly difficult mythic fight that no one saw coming. So I like this fight for the most part. I think the ball, like the Katamari Damacy ball rolling mechanic, was very clever and fun, and I like when they mix completely new things into this game that's been around for 20 years. Nothing is more frustrating than firing your cooldowns as a DPS or a healer, and then immediately being picked for the thing. And I wish there was a way that you could kind of protect against that bad RNG happening. But I thought like the actual mechanic of having to roll the ball around and collect the things, I thought that was really fun. Despite being frustrated every time I got it right after ripping my GG. It's probably my own fault because I just should have not hit a cooldown right before the thing's being picked. But I thought that was a really fun idea. I think the fight is, in my opinion, hectic in a not good way, though. Outside of the
Mhm.
ball rolling, just the ads and the number of ads and the things you have to pay attention to on the floor, and like I think the trash and the fire circles are a fun idea on paper. I don't know if I like them. Like actually playing the boss, it felt incredibly frustrating at times, especially as a melee healer, of like trying to navigate. I need to be punching the boss to heal people, but also shit. Did I light another piece of trash on fire? I did. Fuck. Oops. My bad. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a fight I'm very mixed on. I feel like the ball rolling thing just like is so fun that it elevates it for me over any of the minor annoyances of the fight.
Yeah. I, for the most part, agree. The reason I have a love-hate relationship with this boss is it is extremely annoying, like you said, to lose your cooldowns to getting picked for the ball. And again, there's ways to play around that if you're paying attention, sure. But the biggest annoyance for me was actually when we were progging this. I guess two main annoyances. One, when you're a tank on this fight and you don't really know what you're doing and you're starting prog on it, it is extremely frustrating to try and get aggro on everything and also paying attention to when the boss is going to do his tank buster and making sure it's not standing in like you have about 500 things that you need to do at any given moment at any point in this fight, for somebody who is like fresh progging. And while that's not necessarily a bad thing, once you do get everything understood and you are handling it, it isn't in a good way where it's like, here's one thing, okay, here's another thing, here's another thing. It kind of just throws them all at you at once. And so, like, the amount of times that you fail
Mm-hmm.
just due to the fact that, like, you're having to piecemeal figure out one piece at a time and then put it all together, was super frustrating.
Sure.
The only other part of this fight, though, that I think needs to be looked at if they want to do something like this in the future is rolling over your friends. The stun is like a haha funny gotcha, but it's almost inevitable that it's gonna happen. So
Yeah.
I almost feel like it shouldn't do that. Maybe a small amount of damage, but the stun is, I think, unnecessary. And the other thing is, I think the arena is just too damn big.
Yeah.
Like, it is so, that arena is massive. Like, even playing a marksmanship hunter on that fight, I would have to move to go hit some of the ads that are just casting on people across the arena. And
Yeah.
that's playing a class that has increased range, like, it's a bit ridiculous how large the arena is.
Yeah, I think that's all very fair. I don't disagree. It is so hard to tell if you're about to roll over another player. It is so hard to tell. So I think that was a little bit overly punishing for sure.
Mhm.
So I would like them to maybe not do that next time.
All right. Well, nothing else to really say about Styx. I think it was a good fight. There's just minor things that I think could be done better.
Mhm.
So, the next one, and I am completely blanking on the name of it, but the conveyor belt boss.
Lock and stock. Sprocket,
Yes.
Monger, lock and stock.
That's the one. I thought this is one of those fights where it's like it can be extremely frustrating while you're learning it. And there's so many like areas where people have to have personal responsibility. But when you like, this is one of those fights. It feels to me like for anybody who's played Final Fantasy, it feels like a Final Fantasy 14 boss where it's like when you get it, man, it feels fucking good because it's like it's completely repeatable. You can do it every time. And like the timings line up super well, and you get knocked to the exact position that you need to get knocked. Like everything just falls in line with this boss. And I had a great time once we got this down. It was a rough one to prog on, though. I will say that.
I love this fight. I think this is a great fight. I conveyor belt fights always a fan of. Also, I agree with you. Like from a timing issue, for whatever reason, just all my cooldowns just would always perfectly line up with the damage profile of the fight in a way that like sometimes you have to do research and like figure out like what cooldown am I going to use when, and you really have to think through that. And then sometimes like the clouds part and everything just lines up perfectly and you don't even think about it. And that was this fight for me. I could pump healing on this fight because everything just seemed to line up with my Mistweaver, which made for a really, really enjoyable fight to play. And this is, so just to be clear, this is the point where I did not need to prog this fight. I came in and you guys had already killed this one. And so, I was just kind of absorbing as much as I could, which also means I didn't have to deal with bombs because you already had assignees for that. So I was just like chilling. I was just chilling, hitting the boss, running some drills away, and loving my life. So yeah, I think this is a really fun fight. I love the way in which the difficulty increases as the fight goes on. I think it's a fun to start mixing the conveyor belt mechanics in a way that is dynamic and fun. I think this is a great fight, and they should do more. They should do more things like this. I'm not saying it has to be a conveyor belt, like you get, but like some ways of like bringing in effects like this one at a time, and then after that mixing them together. I think that's why you felt like it was a Final Fantasy fight, because like that is a very Final Fantasy thing. That right. 14 like introduces one mechanic, introduce another mechanic, introduces a third mechanic. Now for the fourth time, mixing two of those. Haha, deal with that. And that's how that game operates a lot of the time. And definitely did that here. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the same rotation every single time. It is a learnable pattern. And so it feels good to execute correctly. Like it might feel repetitive, your 100th time killing the boss or whatever, but it just feels good to execute correctly.
Yeah.
I guess there's not really much to say else on that one. I feel like we're kind of rapid firing some of these, but we kind of need to. So
I mean, I don't know, like the fight's fun. Like what else is there to say?
Yeah, exactly. And we did our like we've reviewed some of these already. So I've got no problems with that. The big ones that I have problems with, I have already talked extensively about, and I'll probably gloss over those because they're near the end. But I guess let's just jump over One Arm Bandit. This fight was like, I don't really know how to explain it. It's fun that you get a damage amp and a healing amp throughout the entirety of the fight. It's fun, in my opinion, to deal with the mechanics and have like you be the like whoever's leading your raid, whoever's putting the coins into the machine picks the mechanics and when those mechanics are happening. And I think that's really cool. And the fact that you always get kind of like the same like things that you can do is really cool. Really, my biggest problem with this boss is on heroic, at least specifically, this boss almost felt easier than some of the previous bosses. Like the tuning, the numbers, like the actual healing and damage required was on par for a boss at which it was at, but like the mechanics felt almost minimal compared to like the personal requirements needed on like something like Lock and Stock.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. Because basically what I was thinking about when thinking about my time with this boss was, Blizzard has said they design the raid for heroic difficulty and then they add mechanics for mythic and subtract mechanics for normal. And I've always like had my doubts with that argument. This to me feels like a fight that's missing something. It feels like the version of the fight we got is not the one that they originally conceptualized and designed, because yeah, I mean, like, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of damage coming out in this fight. There's a lot of healing I have to do, but like mechanically, you kill the ad and you pick up the thing and you put it in the thing, and then like I know each combination of them does something different, and they do, but like the difference from a healing perspective is basically just like do healing, do maybe a little bit more healing, do maybe a little bit less healing, and okay, granted that's like all healing ever, but like just mechanically, like it doesn't. There's not too much that feels differently. It feels almost too. It feels like the combinations on heroic mode are easy enough to deal with that the order you choose to do them in doesn't really matter all too much. It matters a little bit. I'm not saying it doesn't matter at all, especially when progging. I'm assuming I did not prog this boss. But it feels like it doesn't matter enough. And if that's the case, then this boss essentially becomes, there's no mechanics. The mechanic is remember to dodge the rolling coin, and the tanks are dealing with the tank buster, but everything else is nothing until you get to the burn at the end. Which, I mean, there's a fair amount of things going on during the burn phase, and that's fun. And I don't know, that's kind of all I have to say about the fight.
Yeah. I will say there is one super annoying thing on this boss that I hope that they don't do in the future. And I feel like they could do something in a better way here. But the tank buster on this boss, for anybody who doesn't know, does a huge hit on you and then you drop a pool after a few seconds. So you run out after you get hit and you drop the pool. There's no indication that you can't drop these pools on top of each other. And you don't particularly get punished for doing so. Like technically you take more damage. But you can just drop them on top of each other. But they don't stay there. If you drop them on top of each other, then they like slide off of each other and they fill up a part of the room that you didn't even intend to fill up.
Yeah.
And I feel like that the solution to that, if they don't want you stacking them, is to make it like kill you if you stack them,
Yeah.
or something bad happens if you stack them. Not just arbitrarily slide to some random direction in the room and fill up shit that you didn't want. Like that just feels more annoying than punishing.
Yeah.
So I feel like they should solve that in a different way.
Yeah, they should have telegraphed that better or solved it better. I agree with you. That seems silly. That seems silly that that's a thing that happens. I like. I love the look of the boss. I think it's so fun, and it fits like out of any boss in this raid, it fits the aesthetic of a goblin casino raid the best. Like it's such a fun idea. I'm sure the person who first came up with it conceptually was like, "This is going to be awesome," and they were right.
Mhm.
It is. It's fun. It's. I think it's interesting that we felt like it was too easy on heroic, and I know a lot of mythic players will say it was way too hard on mythic.
Yeah.
And so they kind of missed the mark on both sides of it, I think.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Also, if you've ever done this fight on normal, it feels weird. Like things happen so slowly compared to heroic. Like it is an odd experience.
Yeah.
I guess let's go to Muggsy. Muggsy is probably the boss that I have the most complaints about, and not even saying it's a bad boss, but for the raid size at which we were raiding with, this boss gave us so much trouble because everybody had to be on it on every soak, and if people got picked outside of their like soak groups, we had like literally one person extra who could be floating and kind of fix that. So the fact that we were raiding with a smaller group, Muggsy has given us constant challenges. And we've talked about it in the past, so I'm not going to harp on it too much. But other than that, I think this fight's really cool. It has a lot of cool mechanics, and the taunt swapping for the tanks isn't super significant, so you can kind of like juggle the boss back and forth almost freely whenever you want to,
We one
which
tanked
gives
it,
the
right?
tanks. Yeah, we our guild actually did. Yeah, one tank it with a paladin who could bubble off and everything like that.
Mhm.
So it it's one of those fights where you have the freedom. Not a lot of fights give tanks freedom, right? Like almost every fight is a taunt swap at some point, and therefore you have to have two tanks and you have to be taunting at X given point on every fight always. But it was nice to see that this wasn't one of those. But
Yeah.
ultimately, the way I feel about this boss, Scott, and I don't know if you're going to agree, I genuinely like this boss, but I think that it is one of those that they need to take back to the drawing board when they're talking about creating scalable raids and really analyze.
Yeah. I love this boss. I think it's designed brilliantly. I love the, switching sides of the room mechanic and how the players, just like we talked about with Cauldron of Carnage, like the switching. This is switching that you technically have complete control over, although you have a limited amount of time, obviously. But every mechanic in the fight, I think, is fun. With one exception, I really don't like the frost line thing, the frost
I
shoes or
shoes.
whatever.
Yeah.
I really hate that. And just because it's like it's so hard to get to where you need to go. And luckily I was a monk and I could just transcendence. But like most of the frustration I have with that is like I know exactly what I need to do. I know where I need to go. I even have my teammates carefully managing the bombs for me so I can hit and freeze the bombs with it, but I just can't get there because my stupid ice shoes. And they got rid of that in Mythic, right? You can just dip in the fire and you get rid of your ice shoes in Mythic. Yeah, it's so I think that's the only mechanic that I just didn't think was very fun. And then I am in complete agreement with you about the raid size issue. Like there should just not be a stack mechanic that requires 5 players that leaves a debuff on you in a 10-man group. Like that should scale downwards as well. I'm not saying like it was obviously not insurmountable. We got there. But it just leaves so little room for error. And like you try to manage it out where you're just like, okay, everyone's divided into 2 groups. Group 1 is the first soak, group 2 is the second soak, and then a group 2 person gets picked for the soak. And then so you kind of have to change on the fly. Again, not an insurmountable problem. We surmounted the problem. I'm not like saying this was impossible. It's impossible to kill the boss with 10 people. Obviously it's not. But yeah, it did seem a little silly to me that in a 25-man group, how many people need to soak that big soak? 5. In a 10-man group, how many people need to soak that big soak? 5. That seems a little ridiculous to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. The only other part of this fight that I would say is even of really major note is the fact that they're they had the like bomb ads, which were pretty clear that you could run into them and blow them up. And it probably says in the dungeon journal, but in phase 3, where you freeze them in place and then you have to place the like cages down, um, you get into really wonky spots where you can like place a cage on a bomb, and if a bomb touches a wall, then it blows up, and then that causes issues not
Yeah.
only because you have to go soak the bomb, but everything else. Um, and so I don't know. I don't even want to say that's bad. Like I feel like that's a good mechanic, especially for a penultimate boss. Uh, but I want to say that led to a lot of annoyance
Mm-hmm.
once we just because of our raid size. Like we had gotten that far into the fight and we had done things correctly, and it's just like one fucking tiny little wall because one bomb breaks out early or doesn't get frozen or something like, and then we die. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it causes a lot of annoyance.
Yeah. I mean, it's a challenging overlap in phase 3. It is. I don't necessarily feel like it's unfair, but it was definitely more challenging with 10 people than it would have been with more, which doesn't always feel good. So, I mean, like I once again, I talk glowingly about the whole scaling raid thing. I think it was brilliant. I'm so glad they did it. It's allowed us to raid at moments where in the past we just wouldn't have been able to. But it doesn't come without its problems, and this is definitely the boss that I felt that problem the most, for sure.
Yeah, I do think we need to segue this into Gallywix though, because Gallywix had more or less the same issue. Like Gallywix had soaks that needed X amount of players in it as well, which calculating out to a 10-man raid group would require 9 of your
Yeah.
10 players,
Yeah.
and in higher raid groups would still require 9 people specifically. Now, that being said, we have to talk about the Gallywix you and I killed versus the Gallywix that exists now. And man, oh man, did I not know they changed this boss, and I went and did this raid like a week ago. Holy fuck, did they just absolutely neuter the hell out of this guy on heroic.
Yeah. I mean, not only is it doing like much less damage that you have to heal, but like the number, like it dropped the number of big soaks from 2 to 1. And then the canisters only require 1 person to soak them now instead of 3. They have completely changed this boss. I couldn't believe how easy it was comparatively. Not that it's still a challenging boss in its own right, but yeah, I now felt like maybe for the first time I felt like what the Mythic Raiders that do something within the first few weeks versus the people doing Mythic at the very end of the season must feel like when they just completely get these bosses. Cause yeah, I couldn't believe it. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you on the soak problem. And here's actually what I think ultimately the problem is with these soaks. And maybe I'm just wrong here. Let me know. I don't think there's a good enough visual indicator in the game that tells you when you have achieved the number of soaks required to not die from the thing. Like Final Fantasy has, sometimes they'll have multiple people soaks and like towers, and it'll like have a ring around it, and the ring has 3 segments in it, and each segment lights up when a person stands in it. And so when all 3 segments are lit up, you have now put the correct number of people in there to deal with the mechanic. And I think doing something like that, having some visual indicator, and maybe I'm wrong here, and like because I know like soak circles change like their graphic when a person gets in them, and so maybe these canister soak circles did change their graphic when 3 people were in them. Like maybe that changing graphic soak thing changed after the right number of people were in them. Maybe it didn't. I don't know. If it did, I don't think it was visually clear enough. And so what I would like is if they're going to have these kind of mechanics going forward, that they allow you to see within the UI of the game the number of people are in them, because there were definitely moments in our prog in both Gallywix and Mugsy where it was like a mad dash of like, oh, do we have enough people? 1, and you're trying to like squint at your screen to tell 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's like you're inside a big circle of like flaming fire and trying to count individual people in there. I just feel like there should be a way to graphically do this. And I think that would make soaks still require coordination. Like you still need to plan out who goes where, but allow for that like last minute flexibility and change that I think in a post week or a world they want the game to move to. I think it needs to do that.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't notice any of this, any of what you were saying on the boss fight. So the fact that I didn't notice it means even if it was happening, it needs to be more clear, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah, all in all, though, like, what do you think? Gallywix is a good fight, in my opinion.
It's fun.
Yeah,
it's fun. I know there was a lot of Mythic complaints with it being tuned a little too easy for the race, but I felt like the heroic version of the fight was very well designed. It's fun. It escalates over time. It feels like it's getting more challenging right up until the end. The only thing I felt was weird was the area denial part. So first of all, I was very unclear on how the aerial denial stuff actually worked, right? It felt like... So my assumption when you look at the fight, you see 4 towers around the room, 2 gates on each tower that will fall down, and then you have to. I just hit the microphone. Sorry for the loud bump you're going to hear in your ears, but will fall down. You have to put a bomb in them, and then they'll go up. When we were first progging the fight, my assumption to this fight was every time the boss starts doing the AoE, you have to activate one of the towers or deactivate one of the towers, and you did that by dropping 2 bombs into the tower, and that would deactivate the tower. It would stop the AoE, but then would turn on the area denial, and that was the cadence of your fight. And that's not how it works, at least not in heroic. It's literally putting any bomb in any tower at any time stops the AoE. And so, like, even when I felt like we were low on gear and our damage wasn't great, the area denial aspect of the fight just never really showed up in the heroic version. Like, it just never really was an issue, because you could plan it in that way. Like, you really don't start losing wedges of the pie until the 5th ad summon, because that's the first time you have to put a bomb in a spot that will activate the area denial. And like, I don't know, that just felt that felt wrong to me. Like, it felt like they had a good idea and then didn't execute on it in the actual fight. So I don't know.
The other part of it is you get an absurd amount of time to run out of it.
Yeah.
So you can be standing in it for quite a while before it starts damaging you, when it first spawns, at least.
Yeah.
So, like, I guess the goal was not necessarily to force you to pre-position, but really just restrict you. And maybe that's like their entire goal for that was just meant to be the enrage. And that's fair. And I think that that's a fun way to do an enrage. But the fact that you can kind of gamify it and it isn't like ever so slightly getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and then like you're forced to deal with just one wedge. But in fact, you could potentially kill the boss before you even lose one wedge, depending on your damage.
Yeah.
Felt odd. I will agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the perfect tuning of this fight is that on your first kill, you are at your final wedge. You're running out of time. That wedge you're gonna lose your final bit first, and then you kill it. Like, that seems like that would be the ideal tuning. And I know we didn't kill it like week 1. We didn't even kill it like week 5. But also our DPS still wasn't the greatest when we did kill it. And I think we had lost 1 wedge, maybe 2 on our first kill. I'd have to go back and look. But it just never felt to me like, oh, this feels like, oh, we're running out of time. We're running out of time. We're running out of time. It just never felt that way for me. And that feels like a miss. But I mean, other than that, like, I think the fight is great. I really like it.
Yeah. When we were dropping 2 bombs every time, we ran out of room.
Well, yeah, because we were doing it wrong.
Yeah. But then you find out, and it's like, oh, we literally have double the amount of time than we thought we had to kill this boss.
Yeah.
Because like we were trying to like crunch numbers and be like, I don't even know if we have the damage for this right now.
Yeah.
Like, and then we found out you could just do 1 bomb every time. It's like, oh man, this is a joke.
That was so unclear in the design of the fight that I feel like I have to critique that as well. Like, sure, we got to find stuff out, and there's plenty of resources that we could have found that just told us like, hey, you only have to drop 1 bomb. But it just seems so, from the design of the fight, the design of how everything's working, it just seems so evident to me that that's what you're supposed to be doing. And it was definitely not. Like, it feels like the 1 bomb thing is like a normal mode thing, and then like in heroic, no, you have to do 2.
Yeah.
But nope.
Yeah. I agree. But all in all, though, I think Gallywix gets a thumbs up for me. So really, like, looking back on it from my point of view, I have really 1 thumbs down boss, and that's Rick Reverb for me. Vexy was kind of like, but the rest of them, I think, like, I have criticisms for every boss in this raid, but they kind of killed it with fight design. I think I had a lot of fun progging. I had a lot of fun raid leading, and I think it was just a good time.
Yeah. No, I think this was a great raid. Definitely one of the better ones since I've come back. And comparatively to the the middle of the expansion raid from Dragonflight, just leagues better than Aberrus. Sorry, Aberrus, but you were awful.
Yeah, Aberrus was not a great raid. Well, Scott, let's jump into Mythic Plus a little bit, and maybe we need to be a little bit lighter on Mythic Plus than we normally would be. But
I mean, we haven't even really finished the raid section stuff. We haven't talked about Dinar. We haven't talked about the Renown track.
Well, I guess we do need to talk about the Renown track. I was gonna say Dinar kind of fits in with Mythic Plus in a way. But yeah, the Renown track. I'm gonna let you talk about this one a little bit more because I think you're slightly more annoyed about this than I am. But I personally think that this is a interesting way to introduce the raid nerfing over time / buffing of players over time. And we've talked about that in the past. But there are other annoying parts of this. So I'll let you start though.
A good first attempt is my overall conclusion on the track. It was a great idea. And I just think execution wise, it left a lot to be desired. I think it's very unclear to me how the catch-up mechanic works in like, because it seems like if you fall behind, you can catch up, but there's a limit to how much catch up you can do, and the system does not telegraph how much you can do. Like, because right now I'm Renown track 13 on my character. I'm 13, and if you told me right now I could go like run the raid 10 times and get all the way up to 20 before the season ends, I'd be like, I might consider doing that. I don't think you can though. I think like you're capped at like, you definitely get one level a week under the old system, and on the catch-up mechanics, I think you can get one or two more Renown levels max a week, and then you stop getting things anymore. And I just feel like that's really weird and clunky, and I don't like it. So I think like I said, I think like this is the first attempt at something new, and there's a lot of cool stuff attached to it. I love the idea of like getting cosmetic gear from it. I like the raid improvements, like the drink. I think it's a little silly to put wipe protection behind a Renown track. It's like, this just feels like something that should just be in the game. But I think it's a really good first attempt that I think they need to iterate on. I like that in the next patch, they've dropped the level from 20 down to 15. It feels like 20 levels was maybe a few too many. So I like that. So yeah, I mean, I think it works as a system overall. It just needs some clarity on how they handle catch up and how it's displayed and that kind of stuff. I don't know. What do you think?
I completely agree. I think that the catch up should not be you get X amount every week. I think it should be you can get up to what the current maximum is. And that's just how it is handled. I don't know why they did this like weird maximum amount a week thing. Even in the event that you want to catch up to your current main and everything like that. Yeah. Other than that though, like I said, I feel like this is a really good way for them to do a not so annoying, not so invasive, nerfing / buffing of the raid over time.
Yeah.
So A+ for that, and I would like to see that continue going forward. And it looks like we're going to, at least with the season 3 raid.
Yeah. Also change it to where you get the renown from killing the bosses, not from looting the bosses. That's weird. Why are we doing that? Especially when like for bosses, obviously it doesn't matter because I think everyone's gonna loot a boss generally because we've established they've got flight stows on them. But like you can get renown from mini bosses, and like I've been so Mythic Plusified, I don't even think about looting things as we're moving along because you don't do that in Mythic Plus. So yeah, just you kill something that gives renown, give the renown. Done. Do that.
Yeah, I completely agree. But all right. Well, let's jump into Mythic Plus real quick.
All right, we can do this in 10 minutes. Let's do it.
Probably not.
It rules. It rules. Fine. It's great. It's the best,
it
the
does
best season ever.
So generally for Mythic Plus, this one we are not going to go dungeon by dungeon because we have done in depth, like much more than boss by boss for the raid. We have went dungeon by dungeon in the past on this show,
That's a whole
so
fucking
there's not really,
episode.
yeah, there's not really any reason for that. But I do want to say, just generally, like this season of Mythic Plus is the closest that it has come to season 3 of Dragonflight for me. And season 3 of Dragonflight is like up on this pedestal all by itself because I had a team of 5 people to play with. I feel like the balancing and the like difficulty scaling of the keys was in a very good spot. And just like the dungeons weren't overly annoying. So a lot of good things. And I think a lot of that shines through this season and really excels.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to see that going into season 3.
I completely agree. Excellent season. Everything's firing. Like all the changes they made going into season 2 were great changes and they worked. You know, they changed how the keys scale to level 10 to make the keys a little bit easier. They changed what affixes are activating when, and that feels pretty good. It was just fun. It was just really fun. Their philosophy for the number of interrupts and stops and things you need in dungeons is shifting, and that we felt the first real impact of that shift in season 2, and it felt really, really good. Yeah, I mean, I think overall, like the list of dungeons was really strong as well. Although I think like ultimately, if tuning is good and if scaling is good and if the classes are fun to play, ultimately I think the actual dungeon rotation becomes the least important measure of success in these seasons, which is interesting because you would almost think it would be the opposite of that. The dungeon rotation is the most important. But I have found for me that even when I don't like love the dungeons, if just like playing the class is fun, and if the scaling and the tuning is such that doesn't feel like overly punishing, like I don't care where I am. Like so
I will say I am interested to see how we go into season 3, mainly with things like Arakara, because there are some fairly punishing packs in there, and we already know that they've reduced like some dispels, they've reduced kicks, and they've made some things instant cast, and like just tried to shore that up, kind of more like the season 2 mentality.
yeah.
But I'm gonna be interested to see how that actually plays out in an actual pug group and not just watching somebody play it on PTR in a full 5 stack
Yeah.
who's doing things in a very coordinated way. Because the way that it feels in season 2 is like there's enough mobs that you need to kick that everybody needs to be involved, but not to the point of like you feel overly punished for being in a pug.
Yeah.
I guess is the way that I feel.
The most interesting thing to Arakar to me is that they looked at that first pull where you just start the dungeon and pull everything to that first mini boss, and they said absolutely not. they've made the poisons in that first pull, that those one mobs, I forget what they're called, but one of the spiders, they've made those poisons so punishing that like unless you are in a super coordinated group, like I think there's going to be a lot of rude awakening to people who haven't been paying attention to PTR in the first couple weeks, because they're going to go in expecting to do that pull just like they did in season 1, and they're just going to die.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting choice of theirs. I don't hate it because like that is kind of a crazy. It's a, like when every person that runs a key, no matter the key level, is doing that pull, maybe it needs to be a little bit of a harder pull. Maybe. So
I have one question for you.
yeah.
You skimmed over the affixes and how they kind of like shifted up a few key levels for each affix. When we first talked about this, we weren't really sure how to feel because it felt like you were going to essentially like have nothing going up into a 7. Do you feel that way after this season?
I mean, the keys are really easy for me. like everything before 7 is like really, really easy, and then 7 to 10 is kind of easy, and then it goes from there. So like for my skill level, it feels overly simple, but I don't think that's a bad thing. Like I think
Mhm.
the point of the system is you rise to your level of difficulty, and I have not played at those difficulty levels for like a long time, right? Like I belong in the more 12 to 14 range, which is low, a lot lower than some people play at, but a lot higher than other people play at. So like it's okay that those things felt easy for me. Um,
Sure.
I think the system as they have it right now works. I like it. So just to refresh everyone's memory, you maybe you've been doing high keys for a while and you've forgotten what they are. But at a 2, no affixes at all. At a 4, that's when they introduce the rotating weekly Zalateth's affix. A 7 will have your first either tyrannical and fortified, and then a 10 will have the other of those. So I mean, the only thing I could think of changing in this was swapping the where the Zalateth's affix and the first tyrannical and fortified go off. Um, Maybe swapping those, but I don't know. Even that, I'm just like, eh. I like. I think the system works fine as it is because that stuff feels relatively harmless to me.
Hmm.
Um, like I'm so used to running things on 10 and having both fortified and tyrannical that I don't feel like on the lower keys I even notice which week it is. Like I mean, that's the thing I want to say is like being entirely honest with you. I was not paying attention to the affixes on keys on on any of my alts. Basically, it was like I would have
Right.
to remind myself, "Oh, is it tyrannical week or fortified week?" If you're under a 10, I don't remember, and I don't notice. I don't care. Um, so the most critical thing I could say about the affix system as it stands right now is that I think it's almost immaterial. Like the tyrannical and fortified just doesn't feel like a thing because I'm mostly running 10s, so every key is both of them, and it's exactly what we said when they first introduced the idea of making every key both of them. When every key is both tyrannical and fortified, they basically stop existing because you just don't
Hmm.
notice anymore. And then the Zalateth's affixes are just like minor annoyances, with the exception of the dispel one because nobody fucking dispels themselves and just rely on me to heal them up, and I hate it. Um, so like yeah, to get back around to what I was saying, like my one real critique about this is they've effectively tuned affixes out of the game, and I go back and forth on whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. You know, like I don't like the affixes under the old system that we had in Dragonflight, in early Dragonflight. Um, so I don't want to go back to that, but I think maybe there's a world in which affixes exist and dynamically change your gameplay, but are not just fucking annoying things that you hate. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm an affix hater. I'm pretty solidified affix hater. So them being pretty insignificant, I think, is a big old positive for me, to be honest. I think that the Zalateth's bargain affixes are a minor annoyance at best and absolutely fucking frustrating at worst. Um, so I don't particularly love them. I think that the only saving grace that they have is there is an upside to all of them, and I think that that is the main reason why I'm not screaming to have them be removed. Like if they were what they were with no upside, I would not like them, and I would want them to be removed right this instant.
Yeah.
So I think that the fact that they have an upside to them is really the only reason that I'm like, you know what, fine. Like I don't like these things, but at least we kind of get some cool stuff if we do them. So whatever.
Yeah, and those of us that basically play the game at 12s, we just don't have to deal with them anymore.
Yeah. The last thing about Mythic Plus really that is different this season from last is resilient keys. And ultimately, you and I have talked about this, and I like the idea of resilient keys, but we have sat there in our armchairs with our pipes wondering, philosophically, is resilient keys actually a good thing for the game? Because what it ultimately does is it allows the players who are pushing the top echelon of keys to really solidify the fact that they are doing the top echelon of keys, and like creates like this massive dichotomy between that and everyone else below them, because they have the ability to continue to retry and retry and retry and
Mm-hmm.
retry and retry. Um,
Yeah.
and they don't slip down as much. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing we're definitely seeing is that title has never been higher as far as score number required because of that. Exactly what you're talking about. This gulf between the majority of players and the top. Um, like to get title. I think you have to be doing all 19s with maybe a 20 or two, and world first keys are like 21s. So like
mhm.
that's like the difference between someone who can time all 19s and the difference between someone who can time all 21s is score wise not very much, but like gulf of difficulty wise is actually kind of insane. And it's because of resilient keys and because they have this ability to just run it again and again and again. Basically make it tournament realm esque. And like philosophically, yeah, I mean, I know we've talked about this, but just thinking back on it, like, do I care? Because I'm never going to be that person. And it's like, well, no, I don't. I don't care because I'm like, it doesn't ever affect me. But I do wonder if it is good for Mythic Plus that at certain key levels, at certain breakpoints, you can treat it like a tournament realm key.
Mhm.
And I don't know, because we've talked about depleting and whether depleting's good and whether you need depleting. I just don't think the people that are kind of forced into a game mode, and I say forced, like they're doing this to themselves, but like if you want to compete, if you want to be in that top, if you want to try to go for world first keys, you are essentially forced into it. It's like in raid, its players are forced to do splits and do this awful splits that everyone in the race to world first hates splits, but they have to do them because if you want to win, that's what you have to do. And it feels like in Mythic Plus now, everyone hates running the same key 100 times, trying to get the first pull down perfectly so we have a chance to time this key. But if you want to time the key at the levels that will get you world first keys, you have to do that too. And do I think that's ultimately healthy for the Mythic Plus ecosystem? Probably not. Um, I do like that when I fuck up in a key, I don't have to like push a key up to a level I don't need
Mhm.
anymore. Like I like that part of it. I think it's so funny because in this game, this is what we do, right? We have these systems that are built for people, like for everyday players, to help get over an inconvenience hump. But then the top end like takes that system and abuses the fuck out of it.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's like you can't stop that without hurting the people the system was meant for. Like the fact
Mhm.
that you can do splits in this game is a result of wanting to be able to allow people to trade gear amongst each other within the raid, and that there's a timer set with that so you don't have to do it immediately. You can wait till after the raid. But of course, that introduces a way in the system for you to funnel gear, and so now that splits are a thing. But you don't want to prevent that from happening because then it hurts the people that you're trying to help. And it's the same with resilient keys. Is like this the point of this was to try to help people have to do a little bit less homework and have to make the consequences for making one small mistake in a key less dire. But of course the top end are going to use that and exploit is not the right word, not exploit it, but just use it to the fullest extent of it to gain a slight competitive advantage. And it's like it's like what's worse? Like I think resilient key should stick around, I guess is my ultimate conclusion on this whole thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, looking at this as a system that you and I have interacted with, I think that this rules. And so, looking at it through my own eyes, I don't want this to go anywhere.
Yeah.
It's really just like coming down to like, is this healthy for the game overall as a whole? It's one, probably too early to say, and two, I think that we're talking about people who are going to do degenerate things anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And so resilient keys aren't the make or break in that. But they are something contributing to a potential issue. So it's something I just want to make sure that we call out, we talk about, and draw attention to, because I think anybody who is just using this system as you and I would, doesn't even realize that that is potentially happening, in
Yeah.
the 21-20 range of keys. But it is something to keep in mind. But I think all in all, resilient keys need to and should stick around. I think they help out a huge majority of the player base to not have to deal with the stupid annoyance of homework keys as much. Obviously, if you have resilient keys, then you've done all of that keystone level, and so therefore you don't need that keystone level. But at least you're not dropping down 2, 3, 4 keystone levels just because you get somebody who leaves your key or something like that. So yeah, all in all, I think it's a good change. It needs to stick around.
Yep, I agree. All right, the big
Uh,
question though. The big question.
okay,
What is
okay.
your favorite season 2 dungeon?
My favorite season 2 dungeon. Man, that is a good question, because there are quite a few dungeons that have very awesome parts, but also very fucking annoying parts. Um, and it's weird because when you first asked that question, like, what's the key that immediately came to my mind is one that I struggled on the most, and that's Priory of the Sacred Flame. Like, I really like that dungeon. I don't know why. I don't know if it's just because of the layout. I don't know if it's just because of the mob types that you fight. I don't know what it is, but I really like that dungeon. And it's definitely not the easiest dungeon of the season.
No.
But I have a lot of fun. I think the pulls in there are, for the most part, enjoyable. I think that the bosses are a little annoying. The second boss in particular is super frustrating. Um, but I don't know. I have a lot of fun with that place.
Yeah.
What about you?
Um, Floodgate. Floodgate is my favorite of the season and one of my favorite dungeons ever. It is challenging in different ways constantly. Like from a healing perspective, all of the bosses kind of challenge a different aspect of healing. You've got heavy spot healing fights. You've got heavy AoE healing, like AoE burst fights. You got the rot fight as well. It's just like it's a lot of the it's funny, a lot of the healers that are like testing healing in the PTR are running Floodgate to test, because it just offers every single healing profile that you want. So it's like a perfect dungeon if you want to test each healer's ability to respond to different types of damage. It's like all there, and so it makes it feel very dynamic and fun to heal. You're never really doing the same thing. I like the design. I like the layout. I like the kind of open-endedness of it. My only complaint was bubbles, and they fixed that now going into the next season. So like normally I'd be pretty bummed out about a dungeon coming back for the next season, but I'm so happy to see Floodgate come back. I'm excited. It's so much fun. I really enjoy it. Yeah.
I think Floodgate has a lot of the like positives of Priory too, where
Yeah.
it's like such an open just playing field that like you can get your count from pretty much wherever the hell you want to. And like you can pull a fuck ton in the very first part. You can jump down and pull all of the garbage trash that nobody wants to pull. Like there's so many things that you can do. Some people go up and around and pull the like bugs on the top, and then they put a caster to fight Big Mama on. Like there's so many things that you can do in Floodgate. I think that both Priory and Floodgate have that advantage.
Yeah. I really like Priory too. I'm right up there with you. It is definitely the most difficult Mythic Plus dungeon to heal. Like all overall, like doesn't have some of the most difficult bosses to heal, but just like from minute 1 to the end is the most challenging to heal and gave me the most trouble. But I really like it, and I'm happy it's coming back as well. I think I'm happy with both these dungeons returning. Yeah, the two best season 2 dungeons to come back, I think.
So let's talk about some of the ones that we didn't necessarily care for too much, because I think this surprised me. One of the dungeons I hate the most from this season is Mechagon.
Okay.
Which kind of blows my mind, because like I never really had a problem with Mechagon Workshop. I actually, for the most part, enjoyed this dungeon. But like, I don't know if it's just like I'm tired of fucking seeing this place, or like I see what the dungeons that we have coming into the game now are and compare it to that. But like, I'm kind of not jiving with Mechagon. It's like that and Theater of Pain are like by far the worst in my opinion.
Mechagon should never come back to Mythic Plus ever again. I agree with that. I don't dislike it very much. There's a few parts of it. I still think the third boss. Yes, the third boss. The I think that is
Mechanist Garden.
Yeah, I think that's like one of the worst boss fights ever. There's like no healing damage whatsoever, unless someone fucks up, and then you need to respond immediately, which is like the worst kind of healing. And the damage, like the gears are stupid. I hate it. I hate all of it. but I mostly think the dungeon is pretty harmless. It's not that challenging. I think some of the final packs you have to pull, and the ways people skip those and invariably fuck it up. And I think that final boss fight is just too long, because it's broken into two. It just it feels forever on that boss. But I see what you say, but it doesn't bother me that much. Where I'm completely with you though is Theater of Pain, which is absolutely my least favorite dungeon of the season. I hate that place. There's nothing redeemable I can say about it. It feels boring the entire time. And I think it's ultimately because like I don't find any of the boss fights fun, and I'm not just talking about like to heal. I just don't think they're fun to play. Like I think Gorchop is just a hectic mess. Zav is an awful fight. Just like an awful. I think everyone hates that fight. I forget what the other ones. Yeah. The changes to that, I guess, like technically made that better than it was, which was nothing before. But I don't think that's
still nothing.
It's still, I mean, it like there's a lot of spot healing that you have to do as a healer on the two people targeted by the wells, but that's it. And I mean, Mordretha, I don't like that fight very much.
I think Mordretha, like outside of the fight being annoying and making sure your positioning is right for the beam, and then your positioning right for the charges in the second phase, like all of that sucks. Nobody likes that. But like to throw what the fuck she does to tanks on top of that,
Yeah.
like is just criminal. Like
Mhm.
it is so bad that like you just get absolutely fucking slapped on that fight while you're having to move and pay attention to everything else as a tank. It's so rude. It sucks so bad.
Yeah. Yeah. So I go away forever, Theater of Pain.
So I did have one final thing I want to talk about. There's some other systems and stuff that, you know, maybe we'll cover next week because we're going to actually record before the patch drops. But one final thing we need to talk about, because it ties into both Mythic Plus and Raid, is the dinar system. And you and I have both been pretty critical of this system since they released it in season 2. And I don't think that we necessarily need to relitigate that. But as it's intended, it came out into the game, and its intention was, did that work for you? Because I'm going to go out and say it didn't for me.
No. However, this is a season in which I played 5 alts, and the ability to run 4 dungeons and get a heroic version of my Bis trinket is pretty nice. That's the nicest thing I can say about it. On the other hand, after you get the first influx of 3 dinar for 4 dungeons, having to do an additional 12 dungeons for each new piece, 24 dungeons total, sucks. Now, granted, you could do raid fights and stuff like that, but I was on alts. I don't want to do LFR, and I don't want to pug the raid. I'm playing alts. I want to play alts to Mythic Plus, not to raid. I think the system needs a lot of work. I still don't understand their logic behind saying that giving people myth track trinkets would break the game. I think one of the things they said that I will never forget is that, like, we don't want to just hand someone a really high level item that they're going to use well into the next season, and then they give us this belt that's 701 item level. So I think ultimately they need to, like, go back to the drawing board and look at what they want this to be and how they want to do it. I think it is very telling that they have not mentioned it at all in this next season, and I would not be surprised to see it just not show up at all in the next season. But all that being said, like, I'll go back to my original thing, was that, like, it was certainly nice that every single one of my alts has their Mr. Pick Me Up, they have their Jaster Diamond, and they have their Mythic Trinket from Mythic Plus as well.
Sure.
And I didn't have to step into a raid to do that. That was nice.
Yeah, I will say, like, the deterministic loot part of it, I think, is a good thing. Like, I like that. That's kind of the thing that we went back to when it first came out. Like, I like that part. But this definitely needs iterated on, because, like, the fact that you can only really get, like, the trinkets from the content that you're already doing, like, to put this into perspective, I don't want to just hate on dinars because it seems like it was implemented in a jank way. The reason this is so, like, annoying to me is because it directly impacted me in a way I didn't anticipate it to, in which I didn't need dinars to get my myth track weapon or my myth track trinket from dungeons, because I was lucky enough to get it into my vault. And then I didn't need it to get the heroic raid trinket I needed, because I was lucky enough to get it from raid. So, like, the dinars essentially did nothing for me when I was going into it with the assumption that it was going to kind of work like it did in season 4 of Dragonflight, where I could get a trinket from the raid that I could spend time leveling up, potentially myth track item level.
Yeah.
And so, like, it was pretty much just like a dud, a flop for me. But that being said, I think the system and the deterministic part of it is good. Like, I want to see things like this continue. It just needs to be redone.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think the thing we concluded on, and I think it is still true here at the end of the season, is this was a system in which the rich got richer. And it did help. It did help people at the low end. If you're only doing LFR, if you're only doing normal, it did help those people get trinkets better than they would have gotten. But yeah, us kind of smack dab in the middle of it, AOTC raiders that have done all 12s, it didn't necessarily help us in any way. Now again, it helped my alts, sure, and that's great. But is that the point of the system, to make alt gearing faster? No, that's not what the point of the system is. So yeah, I agree. I think they need to look back at this and like, here's the thing. If they're going to do it like they did it this time, if they're going to do it in a 0.5 patch or a 0.7 patch or whatever it was, just give everyone the mythic track item. Like, even if you have to knock down how many items you do it, like if you say, okay, you're not going to get 3 dinar items this patch. You're only going to get 2 because we're giving you myth track items. It's a 0.5 patch. It's a 0.7 patch. Like, you are essentially rewarding people who have stuck it out this long. Why is it game breaking for them to have one myth track bis trinket? Like, it's not going to make them suddenly be able to get CE, right? A heroic raider is not going to get Mr. Pick Me Up and say, haha, now Galliwick's mythic is mine. It'll be easy. No. And You know what is going to make that more? Turbo boosting everyone's item level by 6 in the middle of the season.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Like Turbo boosted that way more egregiously than Dinars would have.
So yeah, I mean, I understand, like they are very careful and they are very conservative with how much gear from Mythic Raid they give everyone, because they want Mythic Raid to feel like this upper echelon unique thing that, like, if you don't raid those bosses, you're just going to have a lot of trouble getting them and just might not ever be able to. I get it. I understand why. But if you're going to have a system like this that's going to come out at the time that it did, just give people a mythic trinket. Just do it.
I completely agree. And it, like, to the point of, like, the Dinars were kind of so sour that, like, I just ignored them at some point. So I want to see it be done better, because I think that the thought process is good. Just implementation needs help.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I am kind of anxiously awaiting to see if it's something they bring back next season at all. I could see it being another turbo boost thing or something like that, but I hope it is a little different. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. Other systems wise, Scott, we're not going to cover any of these because we can kind of talk about it next week when there's not a ton for you and I to talk about, since we record on Mondays, and the patch doesn't come out until Tuesday. So
true.
But I think that the other things, just to touch on what they are that we might be talking about, but like the belt, the Cersei circlet, which I guess is kind of a season 1 item, but also kind of a season 2 item, and Malefic Visions, like, they all are there. I don't think any of these were groundbreaking though. So
did you?
Like I said,
I read somewhere, and I haven't confirmed this, but that Horrific Visions are not going away at the end of the season. They will still be accessible in season 3.
I wouldn't be surprised if they're still accessible, but they said that the enchants aren't going to work, right?
Oh, I didn't know that. I assumed if they were still accessible that the enchant would still work.
I thought, and this is me going off of secondhand knowledge, I haven't confirmed it, but I thought somebody had told me that the helm enchants aren't going to work.
I mean, you're probably right, because the first thing I thought when I heard that they were still going to be accessible is like, you mean I have to do more of these fucking things to get more currency to buy more helm enchants? I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I don't know for 100% certainty, but that was my impression. But I thought they were going to stick around for like the cosmetics and stuff like that.
I mean, that's a good choice, because people might still be running them, and as long as they don't continue to attach player power to it, I'm totally fine with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, Scott, we are quite a bit over time, so we should probably wrap up here.
All right.
It's getting late for you and I, so
yeah, let's just wrap up by going through each delve one by one and saying which we like, and
we're just not even going to talk about the fact that we didn't talk about delves. Yeah, like nobody would have known if you didn't bring it up.
I have to pour one out for my delve people, because there's people out there that love the shit out of delves, and some of them might even be listening to this podcast, and so I just need them to know I've got them. I have their back. I understand. We live in the ground and we dig in the dirt together.
Well, on that note, guys, I want to know, what was your guys' best of season 2, and what was the worst? It can be a dungeon, it can be the raid, a specific boss, any of the systems. So just let me know what you thought the best of season 2 was, what you want to see carried forward into season 3, and what you think the worst was. So as always, you can contact us over at yellingintothevoidwow@gmail.com. YouTube is at yellingintothevoidwow, and Twitter and Blue Sky are both at intothevoidwow.
And if you are not already subscribed to this podcast, season 3 is just a week away, and you want to make sure you follow up with us as we journey through it and review it and talk about it and complain about it and celebrate it and all the things we do here at Yelling Into the Void. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and pretty much anywhere else in the world podcasts are. So subscribe to one of those right now, to make sure you don't miss a single episode. I believe, Tevin, starting with last week's episode, you did upload the video portion to Spotify as well. So if you like watching our faces while we talk, but are not a YouTuber, you can see us on Spotify.
Mm-hmm. That is true. I did start doing that last week, and I plan to continue going forward doing that. So definitely check it out on Spotify. And I'm going to be honest, guys. I messed around with it a little bit. I'm not sure how to access the video recording on all devices. So use at your own will.
On
And
Spotify?
maybe inform me. Yeah.
Well, there's this button. I think it's called play. It's called play.
It didn't work for me. It just did the audio for me. Okay.
I don't know what to tell you, man. Oh, here I'm pressing it. Oh, look, there's me. There's you. It's right here.
Well, either way, definitely check it out.
There's a button
Spotify.
that says switch to video, switch to audio. Did you try pressing that button?
I might not have seen that button. I also, to be completely honest with you, looked at it for maybe a total of 5 minutes. So I'm not going to say too super much. I just wanted to make sure it was working.
It's really,
I couldn't really confirm. So
really disappointing.
But as always, guys, please consider liking, subscribing, and commenting on the YouTube. Also on Spotify, because I found out you can leave comments on Spotify. So definitely, if you're listening on Spotify, comment on there as well. And I will be checking those out now that I know they can be there. But all of that helps us get more exposure and introduces us to new people, allows us to continue what we're doing here. And yeah, I think Scott and I want to continue what we're doing here, especially going into this awesome void-filled season of season 3.
I know. We came up with this podcast name before we even knew that we were... Okay, well, I mean, we kind of knew. There was Zalatath, so we kind of knew. But we had no idea we were going into the void itself.
Back to where it all began.
Yeah.
With Dimensius. And another plot to eat everything. But
gotta love it.
It's gonna get foiled, right? We always have to win. We can't lose.
Yeah, well, of course.
Never lose.
Of course.
All right, guys. Well, again, we're quite a bit over time here. So I think until next week, Scott and I will just be over here yelling into the void.